Hi students, this is the review of your case number 1 from your e-commerce and technology course, and my name is Jorge Mosqueda, your tutor. So first, we need to review the background of the case, and in this case we talked about an enterprise called Pandora, which is the internet's most successful radio service, and it has a database of over 1 million analyzed songs from over 200,000 artists. And in 2014, it streamed over 20 billion of hours of music. So it is a very big company, and it is one of the most successful in their market. So the reason why we focus on the background of the case is because everybody needs to have a common knowledge about the case for us to better understand the answers to the questions. So I think it would be important to review everything that happened during the history of Pandora in order for us to answer the questions. So, Will Glazer and Tim Westergren launched Pandora in 2005, and the business environment was fierce in that moment because competing online stations were making music available for free. This means the radio stations that already existed and transmitted in conventional radios, they also started the internet channels, and they were not charging any they were not making any charges to their customers for the use of the radio service, and many of them did this without any kind of advertising. Also, another important part of the competition that they had is that in 2005 iTunes was a success, and they were charging 99 cents of a dollar for every song that you downloaded. Remember that this was a very innovative way of selling music, because before this time all of the music had to be illegally downloaded, which is not permitted by the government, and was heavily prosecuted by the authorities all over the world. Or the other way was buying the music in stores, but for that you had to buy a whole CD, and the CD contained several songs, and maybe it was very common for people to only like one or two songs out of a disc of 14. So iTunes was a roaring success because they invented and facilitated the idea of selling single songs for just $1, which was very affordable compared to the 14 or $15 that a CD might have costed. Also, as we talked about just a moment ago, online music was illegally downloaded from peer-to-peer networks such as Napster or Casa or Ares or some those types of programs. And since they were downloaded for free, this was a significant contributing factor to the fierce business environment that Pandora was facing back then. So, when the company started, their first strategy was to give away 10 hours of free access to all of their services, and then ask subscribers to pay a $36 fee each month during a year. And the result of this was that 100,000 people listened to the first 10 hours for free, but then they refused to pay the annual service. This means that most of the people liked the application very much, but they were unwilling to pay for the service. This led to the company having financial problems during the same year. At the end, actually, in November of 2005, Pandora introduced an ad-supported option. This is a strategy that they came up with after they saw that selling the service was not enough for the company to survive. So when they implemented the ads, they could start getting money out of it, and also that made them reconsider the way in which they offered the service. So after they implemented the ad-supported option, subscribers could now listen to 40 hours of music in a month for free. After the 40 hours had passed, subscribers had to choose one of these three options. The first one was to pay 99 cents for the rest of the month in order to continue using the service as it was when you had the 40 hours for free. The second option was to sign up for a premium service offering unlimited usage and also several other options like you were able to choose and change the song as frequently as you wanted. The third option was to do nothing and the music would stop playing, but users could sign up again the next month and have another free 40 hours of usage. The result was that this attracted so many users in a few weeks that uh, the company had sufficient advertisers to pay for its infrastructure, so they got out of the financial problems and they were able to survive due to the ad supported option that they offered to their clients. So after they recovered of this difficult situation, later, some months later, during 2006, they added a buy option to each song that was played. So this was very important because this was their second source of financial aid for the company because they made deals with Amazon, with iTunes, and with other online retail sites. Um, they made deals with them so that for every song that you buy from Pandora to Amazon or to iTunes, Amazon or iTunes would have to pay a fee to Pandora for promoting their service and their music. So Pandora basically was getting an affiliate fee. Later in 2008, they added an iPhone app. So I think this was a tipping point for the company because this made the service available almost for anyone everywhere. And since the internet technologies were becoming very widespread and very available all over the developed countries, this made it possible for people to stream music wherever they were, whenever they wanted. So the accessibility to the application just skyrocketed and users could now sign up from their smartphones and listen to the music all day if they wanted. They didn't had the need to be by the computer for them to be listening to some music. And by 2009, this free ad-supported model had attracted over 20 million users to Pandora. So they had already established a very big market and they could reach a lot of people in their phones and wherever they were. So this is when the company decided to offer its freemium service, which was when they launched Pandora One, because this new version of the application offered a higher quality streaming of music. It had no advertising. You also were able to use a desktop application for you to stream your radio also in your computer, and you had less restrictions to use the application than with the free version of Pandora. So um, this was the start of their freemium strategy because they offered some services to some extent, but they also gave you the option that if you pay, you could get even more advantages out of the service. And this is important to this is very important because they implemented it after they had a market of 20 million people. So they were able to offer the service to a lot of people at the same time. Uh, the service had a cost of $36 a year. This is similar to the first idea that they had in 2005 when they just started, but the difference is that this time the application was a success and a lot of people started to pay for the service. So this business strategy is referred to as freemium. Freemium is based on giving away some products or services for free while relying on a certain percentage of customers to pay for premium versions. Since the cost of digital products is close to zero, this was very convenient for Pandora because providing free product for the customers in order for them to try the application and see all the advantages that it had is not very costly for the company. So this allowed them to offer the service to millions and millions of people, and among those millions, there will always be some people that are willing to pay for the service. This enables you to reach many more people because you are offering them the same service as if they were paying, just that when they pay, you make it much more available for them. So we have seen how freemium services can be very efficient to get money when you have large audiences, but this doesn't mean that this is like the holy grail of business, because companies have found that it's a challenge to convert free users into users that are willing to pay. Also, in the case of Pandora, it's something interesting is that the music industry executives remain unsure of the profit potential of the freemium model because they have historically charged much more money for the way they used to distribute music before. It was much more profitable to sell 1 million CDs and gathering about 14 or 13 million dollars out of selling 1 million CDs, and people agreed to this because the option of just downloading one song at a time was not available at the time. So the music industry has been stressed up during the last decades because people are not willing to pay as much as they used to for getting some music. So this is why most of the executives in the music industry question this business model. Also, there have been artists that have removed their music from online streaming apps in protest of freemium, claiming that it devalues their music. So this is some of the challenges that the model is facing right now. So it is not everything is just good things in this model. It has also its disadvantages and its difficult parts. However, some other experts say that this is more an issue concerned with the music industry rather than with the freemium revenue model, because you can use the freemium revenue model in other industries, in whole different industries from the music industry, and it works mainly because other companies like MailChimp, that has nothing to do with music, showed us in during the case how a freemium model can turn a company into a big fortune producer. However, this doesn't mean that the freemium model always works, because we always saw the case of Ning, which is a company who tried freemium and came to a very different conclusion, since the services that they offered were a little bit more complicated than the ones in MailChimp and the ones in Pandora, for example. So since it appears that sometimes the model works and sometimes the model doesn't work, the important question that we have to ask ourselves is, when does it make sense to include a freemium model in a business plan? So the answer varies, but mainly it's when the product is easy to use and it has a very large potential audience. For example, let's remember that Pandora had about 20 million users by 2009, and MailChimp had about 8 million users after implementing the freemium model. Also, you have to use the freemium model when a company has a good long-term customer retention rate. This means that uh, if the number of people that pay for the app is high to the total compared to the total number of users, this is a good way in which a freemium model could be implemented in a company. Also, you need a solid customer value proposition, and this is very important because if the service that you offer doesn't add value to the client, he will hardly pay for your service. And it is also extremely important if in the freemium business plan, that the service that you offer for free, it has to have very little variable costs. This means that the variable cost of providing the product or service to additional customers has to be near to zero. And also, you can use the freemium model if a large user network increases the perceived value of the product. For example, when you talk about WhatsApp, one of the advantages that it has is that so many people use the application that you can practically use it to communicate with everyone, because it is very common for people to have WhatsApp. So people value the size of the social network because it is almost universal, and this also generates value for people. This is part actually of the value proposition of the application. So after reviewing the most important points of the case, the next step is to try to answer the questions. The reason why we analyze the background of the case is for us to have a common knowledge about the case, and so that we're able to answer the questions correctly, and that everybody is on the same channel, so to say. So the first question that you had to answer as a team says, compare Pandora's original business model with its current business model. What's the difference between free and freemium revenue models? So the answer is basically that free revenue models allow complete use of all the features of the app. They can work for either limited amount of time or with no limits, and they get their revenues mainly from ads or affiliation fees. In the freemium revenue model, which can also be combined with ads and with affiliation fees, uh, is the freemium revenue model is based on giving away some products or services for free, and you have to rely on certain percentage of customers that are willing to pay for a premium version of that service that you are giving for free. So in here it is very important to decide which services you are going to give for free and which services you are going to charge for. And also it is important to remember that if the customer is going to pay you to get additional services, the services that you give for free have to be good enough to make the client make the decision of invest some money in your application. The second question talked about the value proposition of Pandora, and the value proposition that it offers is that users select a genre of music based on their favorite musician, and the computer uses an algorithm to put together a personal radio station just for you that plays the songs of the music that you selected from your artist. And also an interesting thing is that it also suggests you music that is similar or music from similar artists for you to be able to get to know more music, similar music, and this is how they promote other artists' music. So I think this is a very interesting part of their value proposition, because sometimes people can like a song, but they don't know a lot of artists that produce this kind of music. So you could use Pandora as a client. You could use the application for you to expand your knowledge about a specific kind of music that you like. In the third question, you were asked why did the freemium model could work in MailChimp, but why is it that it couldn't work with the company called Ning? And in here, I think the best way of representing the answer to this question is to make a comparative chart. In the first part, we have the features in which you are recommended to use the freemium model. For example, the product needs to be easy to use in order to use a freemium model. It also has to have a very large potential audience, and it has to have good retention of their customer, a good retention rate. Also, this is the very important characteristic of all freemium models, the variable costs associated with the free services that you offer to your clients. It has to be very low or near to zero. And the other two characteristics were having a solid customer value proposition and a large user network that increases the perceived value of the product. In the case of MailChimp, they had every one of these aspects. The product was easy to use because sending emails was easy, while in Ning, creating social networks is not as easy as sending an email. Concerning the potential for a big audience, let's remember that Mailchimp was sending about 200 million emails a year before they had the freemium model, and they rose up to 18 billion emails after they had the freemium model and 8 million users. In the case of Ning, people or companies looking to develop social networks accounts to the thousands, not to the millions. So the potential audience for this application in particular was also not very attractive. So in the first two criterion, MailChimp did it very good, but Ning did not. The third criterion was met by both companies because Ning had a retention rate of 13%, and and the Mailchimp company went from 85,000 users before using the freemium model, and they went up to 8 million subscribers in just a few years. Regarding the well, this last criterion was met by both, but again, meeting just one of those criteria doesn't assure you the success, and you can see it very clearly in the Ning case. Regarding the variable cost, I think this was the main reason why Ning was not able to succeed, because the case stated that it was very costly for them to have free users that did not pay for the service. And in MailChimp, since what they did was just sending emails and advising if the marketing campaign was being effective, this was practically free. I mean, the virtual part of the service that they provided, it has a very little variable cost. Most of their costs were fixed, so they too complied with this feature, while Ning did not. Having a solid value proposition, since I think both companies met this because we saw it in last week, and I think that if you don't have a value proposition to start with, it is very difficult to even develop an app. And well, in this case, MailChimp and Ning both had an interesting value proposition because MailChimp dedicated to advertising and evaluating the effectiveness of a marketing campaign, while Ning enabled companies and individual users to be able to create their own social networks. So I think both ideas have a lot of potential, and both ideas can be very interesting for anyone who is looking to develop a marketing campaign or a social network. In the last feature, we have that the fact that they have a big network of users that increases the value for the client. And in the case of Mailchimp, this was very useful because since they dedicated to sending emails and to promoting marketing campaigns, the more people you're able to reach, the more value that it has for your customers that are paying you for you to deliver their marketing campaign. So in this case, MailChimp benefited directly from having a lot of users, but in the case of Ning, this was not the case because uh, for an individual user, it was the same if the company had one client or 80,000 clients. That didn't help you to perform your work better. That was not part of their value proposition. So this is one of the reasons why this is the company also failed. The last question is regarding the most important consideration that one has to take when using a freemium revenue model. And this was directly stated by the case, since it said that one of the most important things is that the variable cost of providing the product or service to additional customers needs to be very low or near to zero. So after answering the four questions, here is important to point out the role of having an individual participation and a plenary discussion of the results. So the reason that we ask you to do an individual participation is for you to be forced to read the case and to understand it and to come up with the answers of the questions by yourself. And after you know the answers to the questions as you wrote them on paper, the idea was to discuss it with the rest of your teammates, because it is possible that some of your teammates could have seen a different approach to the question than the approach that you took to answer it. So it's very important to understand your contribution to the answer and also hear the contribution of the others to come with a more complete answer to the questions of the case. This is this is basically the role of the individual participation and the plenary discussion to come up with the results. And finally, you were asked in the report to comment about the relevance of this activity in the context of the course and in the context of your region. And you are asked to include in the document the relevance of the case for the course and its correlation with the topics that we're studying, and for local organizations in your region. The reason why we ask you this is because you have to be able to relate the concepts of freemium and the characteristics that make this model a success with what you're seeing in the course. For example, with related with concepts about the key elements of the e-commerce, for example, the value proposition, the revenue model, the management team, the all of the 8 aspects that we saw during the first week are very related with what we saw in this week. So it is very important for you to be able to relate everything that we saw about Pandora with all of the concepts that we have been seeing during the past weeks. And also, it is very important to understand how the case correlates with the local organizations in your region. And this is mainly because the factors that can work for one company in one part of the world maybe are not as effective as the factors that could influence a company in another part of the world. And it is very important to understand this because depending on the region in which you are, different factors can affect and can make you succeed or can make you fail in your company. So, uh, the more you understand the conditions in your local environment, for example, if you're in a country where internet is not very available, this could be a very big barrier for you to establish an e-commerce company. So, um, this is basically the general review for the activity, and these are the most important aspects and the explanation of why you were asked to do the activity that you were asked to do. I hope that you enjoyed this explanation and you found this enriching. If you have any more questions, feel free to contact me. I will be more than happy to answer.